Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're diving into some sneaky ways our brains trick us into seeing the world a certain way, and more importantly, how knowing these tricks can help us make better decisions and live a little smarter. If you've ever wondered why you sometimes make choices that don't make sense, or why certain thoughts seem to take over your mind even when they shouldn't, this is for you. Spoiler alert, it's not just you. Our brains are like well-meaning friends who think they're doing us a favor but get the details a bit wrong. So, let's break down some of these mental shortcuts, also known as biases, that steer us off course. Trust me, once you know them, you'll spot them everywhere. First up, let's talk about anchoring bias. Now, this one is as common as your morning coffee, but not nearly as helpful. Anchoring bias happens when the first piece of information you hear becomes the anchor that sets the stage for everything you think afterward. Let's break that down. Say you're shopping for a new phone. The first one you see is priced at $12,200. Ouch, right? But then you spot another for $800, and suddenly, it feels like a bargain, even though $800 is still a big chunk of change. That's anchoring bias doing its thing. The $12,200 price tag anchored your perception, making the $800 phone seem way more reasonable. Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel laureate who wrote Thinking, Fast and Slow, tells us that this bias isn't just something that happens in shopping malls. It pops up in salary negotiations, house hunting, and even at those yard sales where someone convinces you that an old lamp is worth $50 because they started by asking for $100. It's that mental anchor that gets you. And get this, it's not even limited to numbers. If someone tells you, this restaurant has the best burgers in town, your mind is anchored to that expectation. Even if the burger is just okay, you might still convince yourself it's the best just to match that anchor. So, how do we outsmart this sneaky bias? Simple. Pause and question that first piece of information. If you're negotiating a raise or buying a big-ticket item, don't let the first number thrown out set the bar. Do a little research, check other prices, and remind yourself that just because something starts high doesn't mean it's actually worth it. It's like hitting the mental refresh button before making any decisions. Now, on to the availability heuristic. This one's a little less obvious, but once you know it, you'll start seeing it in how you think every day. The availability heuristic is when we judge how likely or common something is based on how easily examples come to mind. So, if you just watched a documentary about plane crashes, you might find yourself gripping the armrests on your next flight because your brain's whispering, "It happens all the time." In reality, flying is one of the safest ways to travel, but your mind is playing tricks because that crash footage is fresh in your memory. Kahneman breaks this down by showing that we rely on vivid or recent examples instead of actual facts. Remember when shark attack stories were all over the news, and suddenly everyone was nervous about going to the beach? The truth is, you're more likely to get hurt slipping in your own bathroom than by a shark. But because the shark story is dramatic and easy to remember, your brain puts it at the top of your risk list. It's like when your friend says, "Hey, did you hear about that guy who won the lottery twice?" Suddenly, playing the lottery doesn't seem so impossible, does it? But if we pause and think about the actual odds, we'd probably hold on to our $5. So what's the fix here? When you find yourself thinking, "Oh, that could totally happen to me," ask yourself why you believe that. Is it because it's genuinely common, or is it just a story you saw on TV or heard from a friend? If it's the latter, take a breath, look up the stats, and let logic join the conversation. This little trick can help you stress less about unlikely events and focus more on what's actually worth your energy. And now, let's talk about a story that's been used as a cautionary tale for ages. Easter Island. You might remember the tale from school, an island full of people who chopped down every last tree, ruining their own environment and leading to the collapse of their society. It's been trotted out as the ultimate example of human short-sightedness and self-destruction. But Rutger Bregman in Humankind digs deeper and finds that the story isn't as black and white as we were taught. Sure, the environment changed, but it wasn't just because the islanders went wild with their axes. European colonizers brought disease, and there were outside pressures that played massive roles in what happened. The simplified version of the story, people are greedy and ruin everything, isn't the whole truth. Why does this matter? Because if we keep telling ourselves that people are naturally self-destructive, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking, why even try to do better? But when we look at the full picture, we realize that humans aren't doomed to make the same mistakes over and over. We're capable of learning, adapting, and getting it right if we actually pay attention to what really happened. That's way more empowering, don't you think? So, what can we take from all this? Well, knowing about anchoring bias means you can hit pause before making a decision and make sure that first number isn't messing with your head. Recognizing the availability heuristic helps you stress less and question those one-in-a-million stories your brain loves to latch onto. And understanding the true story of Easter Island? It reminds us to not fall for simple doom and gloom stories, and to know that we're not doomed to repeat the same mistakes if we take the time to learn the real lessons. Think of these biases as those filters you put on photos. They change how you see the picture without you even realizing it. But once you know they're there, you can choose whether to use them or see things as they really are. So the next time your brain tries to anchor you to a high price, freak you out with an unlikely story, or tell you that humanity is a lost cause, you'll be ready to say, "Not today, brain, not today." Thanks for hanging out with me today and exploring how understanding these biases can help us think clearer, stress less, and be a little kinder to ourselves and others. If you found this helpful and want more content on how our minds work, hit that like button and subscribe. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with an example of when you fell for one of these biases or a time when you caught yourself and thought, "Nice try, brain." Do you agree that we can outsmart these mental tricks? Or do you think there's more at play? Let's chat about it. Remember, the best way to learn is to keep questioning and stay curious. Until next time, stay curious.